Can you please get up? The flight attendant said sharply. You don't look like you belong here. The words sliced through the quiet hum of the airplane cabin. For a second, time froze. The soft clinking of glasses, the faint whir of engines. Everything seemed to vanish, leaving only that cold voice echoing through first class. The black waitress, Maya Carter, blinked in disbelief. Her fingers trembled around the seatbelt buckle she had just fastened moments ago. She looked up at the tall, blonde flight attendant towering over her, lips pressed into a thin line, eyes full of polite superiority. I think there's a mistake, Maya whispered. I'm in seat 2A. A few heads turned. A businessman lowered his newspaper. A woman with diamond earrings stared openly. The attendant's voice softened, but only slightly, the way someone does when they think they're right. Ma'am, this section is for premium passengers only. Could you please show me your boarding pass again? Maya's heart thudded in her chest. She reached for her purse, trying to keep her voice steady. Of course. Her fingers brushed over a small, worn wallet, the kind with frayed corners and a faded family photo tucked inside. Inside, she found her boarding pass. First class. Seat 2A. She handed it to the attendant, who glanced at it quickly and frowned as if it had to be fake. Before all this, before the stares, the humiliation, it had been the best morning Maya had had in years. She'd started her day at Pearl's Diner, a little 24-hour restaurant just outside Atlanta Airport. She'd worked there for 6 years, serving truck drivers, businessmen, lonely travelers. Everyone knew her as the waitress who never forgot an order and always smiled, even when her shoes were soaked in coffee by noon. That morning, one of her regulars, a quiet old man named Mr. Donovan, had stopped by for his usual black coffee and pancakes. As she refilled his cup, he noticed the faded plane ticket sticking out of her apron pocket. Going somewhere, Miss Maya? He'd asked. She smiled shyly. Just to New York, sir. My niece's graduation. Been saving for 6 months. He'd nodded, thoughtful. Then, as he paid his bill, he handed her an envelope. A small thank you. You've been kind to me every week for years. Consider it an upgrade. You deserve one. She didn't open it until she reached the airport, and when she did, her jaw dropped. It was a first-class voucher, fully paid. She'd cried right there at the gate, quietly wiping her eyes before boarding. For once in her life, she felt seen. Now, sitting in that plush leather seat, she'd finally let herself breathe, just for a moment. The scent of brewed espresso filled the air, soft music playing through hidden speakers. She traced her fingers along the polished tray table, whispering, maybe life's finally changing. And then came the flight attendant, badge reading. Elise R. had looked at Maya twice before speaking. The first look was confusion, the second disbelief. As if this woman in a faded denim jacket and scuffed sneakers couldn't possibly afford to sit here. Now Elise held the boarding pass, glancing from it to Maya again. This doesn't make sense, she muttered. Let me check with the front. It was a gift, Maya said softly. I was upgraded by someone. Elise's polite smile returned, the kind that hides judgment behind customer service training. Of course, ma'am. Just stay put while I verify. She turned sharply, heels, clicking against the aisle floor, and disappeared toward the cockpit. Maya sat frozen, aware of every eye on her. The businessman in the next seat shifted uncomfortably. The woman with diamond earrings leaned closer to her husband and whispered something behind a hand. Her throat tightened. She wanted to shrink into her seat, vanish into the window. But instead, she lifted her chin. She looked at the ticket in her hand, seat 2A, first class. She'd earned her dignity every day she'd worked double shifts for 6 years. No one would take this small joy from her. Elise returned moments later, arms folded. I'm afraid there's an issue with your ticket, ma'am. Please come with me to sort this out. Maya's stomach dropped, She could feel tears pressing behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "Is there a problem, miss?" A voice came from behind, low, calm, but firm. Everyone turned. A man in an expensive navy suit stood up from seat 3B, eyes fixed on Elise. And just like that, the air in first class changed. The man in the navy blue suit, tall, composed, mid-30s, stood with quiet authority. His expression was calm, but his eyes carried something sharp, something that made the entire cabin pause. "Is there a problem here?" he asked, his voice deep and even. Elise straightened instantly, her professional smile returning. "Oh, not at all, sir. Just a small ticketing issue. We'll have it sorted in a moment." The man's gaze flicked to Maya, who sat frozen in her seat. "She looks like she has her ticket," he said. "Isn't that enough?" Elise's smile tightened. "Sir, sometimes the system makes errors with upgrades. We just need to confirm she's authorized to sit here." Maya felt the weight of the moment pressing on her chest. Every pair of eyes in first class was now trained on her. The businessman with the newspaper lowered it completely. The woman with diamond earrings pretended not to stare, but she was listening. Even a flight attendant from the back leaned forward, slightly curious. Maya finally spoke, her voice trembling. "I didn't do anything wrong. I was upgraded at the gate. I have the confirmation email." She unlocked her phone, her fingers shaking, scrolling quickly to show the digital voucher. Elise didn't even glance at the screen. "Ma'am," she said in a voice laced with false patience, "I'm asking you nicely. Please step out for a moment so we can clear this up privately." "But why can't we clear it here?" Maya's tone was small but steady. "You're embarrassing me for no reason." A murmur ran through the cabin. The man in the navy suit crossed his arms. "Seems like you're the one causing the scene, not her," he said quietly. Elise's cheeks flushed. Her professional tone cracked for the first time. "Sir, I'm simply following protocol. If you'd like to file a complaint, you can do so after landing." Maya's heart pounded. Her hands gripped the armrests. For a moment, she thought of her niece waiting in New York. The proud smile, the graduation robe, and something inside her refused to break. "I'm not leaving this seat," Maya said softly, her voice clear now. The words hung in the air like a challenge. The businessman cleared his throat. "She has her ticket. Let her be," he muttered. A young woman a few rows back pulled out her phone, camera lens glinting in the light. The tension was no longer private. It was being recorded, Elise noticed. "Put that away!" she snapped. The passengers exchanged glances. Her tone betrayed her frustration. The man in the navy suit stepped closer. "You're making a mistake," he said calmly. "And it's all on video." Elise froze. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across her face. Her authority slipped for just a second. Maya sat upright, breathing hard. For the first time since she boarded, she felt something shift, the shame melting into quiet strength. Elise turned away abruptly, muttering something under her breath, before disappearing toward the galley. The murmurs grew louder now, whispers, disapproval, sympathy. Maya stared out the window, blinking back tears she refused to show. The city below was fading into clouds, but somewhere inside her, a storm was forming, and she knew this wasn't over. The flight had been in the air for barely 20 minutes, but to Maya it felt like hours. Her heart still raced from the confrontation. Every time someone shifted in their seat or a flight attendant walked by, she flinched slightly, expecting another comment, another command to please step out. But the man in the navy blue suit hadn't sat down since Elise stormed off. He stood quietly near Maya's seat, arms crossed, eyes focused on the aisle where the flight attendant had disappeared. Finally, he turned to her and said softly, "Don't worry. You did nothing wrong." Maya gave him a hesitant smile, unsure how to respond. "Thank you," she murmured, her voice barely audible. I'm Rahim, he said, extending a hand. Rahim Johnson. She hesitated before shaking it. Maya Carter. He nodded slowly. I know that look. I've seen it too many times. Someone thinking you don't belong in a place you've worked your whole life to reach. Before she could answer, Elise returned, her smile tight again, her tone overly calm. Mr. Johnson, I appreciate your patience, she began, ignoring Maya entirely. We've spoken with the gate, and there seems to be some confusion regarding this passenger's upgrade. Until it's verified, she'll need to move to economy. Rahim's eyes narrowed. And you verified that she wasn't upgraded? Elise hesitated. Well, not yet, but then you're asking her to move without confirmation, he said flatly. Several passengers murmured in agreement. The businessman who'd been pretending to read his paper finally spoke up. She showed her ticket, he said. It says first class, clear as day. What's the issue? Elise's composure cracked again. Sir, please let me handle this. Rahim took a step closer, his voice lowering but his words slicing like steel. You're not handling it, miss. You're harassing her. The words echoed through the cabin. Even the hum of the engines seemed to fade. Elise flushed crimson. I'm just doing my job. Rahim didn't flinch. Then do it right. Because what I'm seeing isn't procedure. It's prejudice. Maya's breath caught. No one had ever spoken up for her like that. Not in the diner. Not anywhere. For a moment, she saw her reflection in the window. Small, tired, but now seen. Elise's voice trembled. Sir, please sit down or I'll have to call security once we land. Rahim smiled faintly. That's fine. They can meet me too. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a slim black card, handing it to her. Maybe they'll recognize the name. Johnson Aerotech. I design aircraft systems, and I've flown on this airline's board of directors twice this year. The entire cabin fell silent. Elise's eyes widened slightly as she took in the white, embossed logo. She stammered, You're that Mr. Johnson? He nodded. And I'm telling you, this woman stays exactly where she is. The tension snapped. Passengers started whispering louder now, some pulling out phones again, others shaking their heads in disbelief. The young woman who had been recording earlier spoke up softly. Good for you, ma'am. Don't let them move you. Elise's jaw tightened. I'll need to speak with the captain. She turned quickly, disappearing again toward the front of the plane, her perfect bun trembling slightly with every step. Maya let out a shaky breath she hadn't realized she was holding. You didn't have to do that, she whispered. Yes, I did, Rahim replied. Because people like her count on you being too polite, too scared, or too tired to argue. You showed her more grace than she deserved. Maya stared at him, a tear slipping down her cheek before she could stop it. I'm not used to people standing up for me, she admitted quietly. Rahim's expression softened. Then maybe it's time you got used to it. A few passengers nearby smiled, nodding, in quiet support. The man with the newspaper even offered her a tissue, muttering, Hang in there, miss! For the first time since boarding, Maya felt warmth in her chest instead of humiliation. The sting of the insult hadn't faded, but it was transforming into something else. Resolve. A few minutes later, the cabin intercom crackled to life. Ladies and gentlemen, came the captain's voice, we're aware of an issue regarding a seating concern. Please remain calm. It's being reviewed. Whispers rippled instantly. Passengers exchanged glances, a mix of irritation and disbelief. The airline was clearly trying to manage a PR disaster before it began. Rahim leaned toward Maya and said quietly, Don't worry. Whatever happens next, you've already won. Maya smiled faintly, gripping the armrest. Outside, the window. Clouds drifted past, their tops glowing gold in the sunlight. But she knew what that announcement really meant. Elise wasn't giving up. Not yet. As the seatbelt sign flickered on and off again, Maya's phone buzzed. A message popped up from a number she didn't know. "We're with you. The videos. Already online." Her eyes widened. Someone had uploaded the footage. The quiet humiliation she'd endured moments ago was no longer just hers. It was about to become the world's. By the time the plane began its descent, the tension inside, the cabin was thick enough to cut with a knife. No one was talking loudly anymore. Everyone was quietly aware that something much bigger than a seating dispute had happened thousands of feet in the air. Maya sat still, her fingers clasped tightly in her lap. The phone on her tray table wouldn't stop buzzing. Notifications flooded in. Strangers tagging her name, people asking, "Is this you?" Clips from passengers were already spreading across social media under hashtags like "Flight Attendant Shames Black Woman" and "I'd Stand Up for Maya." Rahim leaned slightly toward her. "You might want to turn your notifications off," he said calmly. I can't believe this is happening," she whispered. "I didn't want attention. I just wanted to fly." He smiled faintly. Sometimes the universe chooses its own moments. When the plane touched down, the tension grew heavier. Elise, the flight attendant, avoided looking in Maya's direction. Her once pristine uniform seemed to weigh on her shoulders now. Her face was pale, and her hands trembled slightly as she prepared for landing. She'd been on the phone with the captain for the last 15 minutes, her voice hushed and shaky. As the seatbelt sign turned off, Rahim stood, but before anyone could move, the captain's voice echoed through the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, before disembarking, please remain seated. Security and management will board briefly to address an in-flight matter." Maya's stomach dropped. A few gasps rippled through the cabin. Moments later, 2 airline supervisors entered, accompanied by a calm but serious-looking security officer. Their expressions were composed, but their eyes told another story. They already knew what had happened. The lead supervisor, a woman in a gray blazer, approached Elise first. "Miss Bennett," she said softly, "we've reviewed the reports and seen some footage. Please gather your belongings and step aside." Elise froze. "Wait. You don't understand." "Please," the woman repeated firmly. Passengers murmured again, some whispering, some recording. Maya sat motionless, her heart pounding. She didn't want revenge. She just wanted this to end. But watching, Elise being escorted toward the front of the plane, brought a quiet, strange ache. Rahim glanced at Maya. "Justice doesn't always look clean," he said quietly. As Elise passed Maya's row, her eyes flickered with a mixture of anger and shame. For the first time, she seemed small, fragile even. "You ruined me," she whispered under her breath. Maya didn't reply. She just looked forward. The supervisor turned to her next. "Miss Carter, we sincerely apologize for what you've endured today. Our company does not tolerate this kind of behavior. You'll be receiving an official statement and compensation." Maya shook her head slightly. "All I ever wanted was respect. That's it." The woman's eyes softened. "And that's exactly what you'll get from now on." As passengers began to deboard, many stopped to pat Maya's shoulder or whisper words of support. The young woman from earlier smiled. "You were brave. The whole world's watching." Outside, journalists and cameras were already waiting. Somehow, the video had gone viral before the plane even landed. Rahim walked beside Maya as they stepped off the ramp, shielding her from the flashes. "Come on," he said. "You've got people waiting to hear your side." She glanced up at him, confused. "My side?" He nodded. "The world's quick to judge, but it's your truth that matters." As they exited the terminal, Maya took a deep breath. The air outside felt heavy, but it also felt like freedom. For years, she'd been the woman quietly enduring humiliation, whispers, and judgment. but not anymore. Somewhere behind her, Elise was being led into a quiet office, facing the fallout of her own cruelty. And for the first time, Maya realized that sometimes standing your ground didn't just change your day, it changed your destiny. By the next morning, Maya Carter's name was everywhere. Her face, weary but strong, filled phone screens, news segments, and trending hashtags across every social platform. The video titled, "Flight Attendant Tries to Remove Black Waitress" from first class, passenger stands up for her, had already surpassed 12 million views overnight. Clips of her calm defiance, the quiet strength in her voice when she said, "I'm not leaving this seat," became a rallying cry for thousands who'd felt silenced or invisible. Stand with Maya. Dignity has no class. She belongs. Here each tag carried her story further, turning one humiliating flight into a global conversation about respect, prejudice, and humanity. Maya sat quietly on her couch, coffee in hand, still processing everything. She wasn't a celebrity or an activist, just a waitress who'd wanted to attend her niece's graduation. But now, her inbox was filled with interview requests, brand offers, and thousands of heartfelt messages from strangers. Her phone buzzed again. Another call. The caller ID read, "Morning View TV Network." "Maya, this is Jordan Reed from Morning View," the voice said warmly. "We'd love to have you on our show tomorrow. Millions have heard about you. We'd like them to hear from you." For a moment, she didn't know what to say. I'm not sure I'm ready for that kind of attention." "Then just tell your truth," Jordan replied. "That's all people really need." Later that day, a message popped up from Raheem, the quiet man from the flight. "Saw the headlines, told you the universe picks its own moments. Proud of you." She smiled faintly, typing back. "Thanks for standing up for me. You didn't have to." "Maybe not," he replied, "but when good people stay silent, wrong things grow louder." The next morning, Maya sat under bright studio lights, her palms damp with nerves. Across from her, the interviewer smiled gently. "Maya, when that flight attendant told you that you didn't belong, what went through your mind?" She paused, taking a deep breath. "For a second I believed her," she admitted. "I looked around and thought maybe she was right, but then I realized my worth doesn't come from a seat number, a uniform, or someone's opinion. It comes from who I am, and no one can take that from me again." The studio went silent. Then applause filled the room. That moment, a simple, honest declaration, became the heart of every news headline that followed. By the week's end, the airline had issued a public apology. Elise, the flight attendant, released a statement expressing regret and asking for forgiveness, and Maya, the woman who once served others quietly, was now invited to speak at diversity and inclusion events around the country. Standing on stage weeks later, she ended her first talk with the same words that had carried her through that day. "You don't need power or privilege to stand tall. You just need to know you belong, no matter who tries to tell you otherwise." The audience rose to their feet, applause echoing through the hall. Maya smiled, not out of pride, but peace. The woman who once felt small on a plane now stood before thousands, reminding them of their worth. And as the lights dimmed, she whispered quietly to herself, "Maybe I was always meant to fly, just not the way I expected." If Maya's story moved you, share it. Someone out there needs to remember that they belong, no matter where they sit.